Welcome to Saegertown, Pennsylvania. Resting along French Creek near the center of Crawford County, this beautiful creekside borough is filled with rich history and local pride. Join us as residents show and tell everything that makes their community a great hometown.
Hi, I'm Linda Fink. I'm president of the Saegertown Heritage Society, and today I'd like to talk about early Saegertown bottling, which led to the development of the Saegertown Inn. In 1883, the Benner brothers drilled a well close to an ice house that they had constructed the previous year. When they got the water from this well, they found that it was very smelly and had a peculiar taste. So they took the water to nearby Allegheny College and had it analyzed. And just what they suspected, it had a very high mineral content. At that time in history, people believed that if you partook of waters, it had benefits medicinally. So the Benners, capitalizing on this, decided that they would bottle this water and sell it. The spring became very well known, and people started to come just for the water. So much so that 5 years later, they decided to build a hotel so that people have someplace to stay when they come to take the water. And this first hotel was known as the Eureka Springs Hotel and Sanitarium. It was a two-story structure with approximately 100 rooms. They had sitting rooms, sun parlors, gymnasium, and most important, a spring room. And in the spring room, you would take a glass from the shelf on the right-hand side, dip it in a basin of water, drink it, and then put your used glass on the left-hand shelf. And you hope people had clean hands that drank before you. We actually have here at the Heritage Society Museum the actual basin that was in the spring room at the inn. And you could have a variety of different baths because there was a bathhouse attached to the inn. It was approximately 30 6x8 rooms, and they were segregated by sex. And once you had your bath, then you didn't have to go outside then to get back into your hotel room. The baths were a variety dependent on the temperature and also on what they put in the baths. So you had things like a sea salt bath, a vapor bath, an electric bath, which sounds very scary to me, Turkish bath, Russian bath, carbonized water, and then you also had access to a physician to give you a medical exam, and massages were available also. The Benners began experimenting with carbonizing their water for drinking, and in 1889 they won an award for their soda pop at the Industrial Exposition in New York City. In 1900, Saegertown Ginger Ale actually won the Grand Prix Award for the best soft drink in the world at the World's Fair in Paris, France. Our ginger ale was so much better than the others because it was actually made from ginger roots from Jamaica, where a lot of other companies used cayenne pepper flavoring. For a brief time, the Moses brothers from Cleveland owned both the bottling works and the hotel, and it still was located at the end of Broad Street along French Creek. In 1898, Horace Fox, who had managed one of the first hotels in Chautauqua, New York, decides to lease the hotel and the bottling works and run it along with his son Frank. It was so successful that 2 years later, they actually bought both of them and expanded both the facilities. The hotel expanded by about 30 more rooms than what they had previously, and the Foxes were known as the ultimate hosts. Under the Foxes' ownership, that was the heyday of the inn. From about 1900 to about 1915. They averaged about 10 trains a day would bring guests to the inn, and a lot of famous people actually stayed here. John D. Rockefeller, who was the richest man in the United States at that time because of Standard Oil, he came here so often that his barber actually had a permanent room at the hotel. In 1929, the bottling and the hotel for the first time are going to be under different ownership. Local businessmen will purchase each of them separately. Both went through rough times in the 1920s and the 1930s. the inn's popularity began to wane, and that was due to a variety of factors. First, it was severe economic times. People at that time began to have new medical technology, so they didn't believe in this healing power of the water to solve all your troubles. But the most important thing was the invention of the car. Now people didn't have to ride the railroad. Crawford County, of course, always claims to be halfway between New York City and Chicago. But now if you wanted to take a trip all the way through Alabama to get to Chicago, you could do that. And so people started not coming to the inn as much. In 1934, part of it was torn down. And in 1949, Howard and Hazel Majors, who were the last owners of the inn, had it completely razed. Okay, in the 1940s, Saegertown Beverage will add their top-of-the-line product, and that's called Chantilly water. It was actually served at gourmet restaurants in New York City, and in the 1940s, it sold for $3.96 a bottle, which was pretty expensive even today. In the 1950s, another group of local businessmen will buy out Saegertown Beverage, and one of those was Governor Raymond P. Schaefer of Meadville. At this time, they hire a new chemist by the name of Bob Dadgett, and he will remain with Saegertown Beverage for several decades. And at this time, they have 56 varieties of pop because they added fruit flavors, cream soda, tonic water, and they will start using a trademark of the Aristocrat being the highest quality. So Saegertown Beverage became known as the Aristocrat of beverages. When I was growing up, all I remember is Saegertown Pop. It was the best tasting, and it always came in a glass bottle. In 1981, Saegertown Beverage couldn't compete with Coke and Pepsi that was coming out with aluminum cans. They would have had to change their production line completely. So they resorted back to their original state, which was bottling water, and they will bottle under the Eureka Springs brand. They also have some private labels for corporations and groups, but it's still water from a spring in the borough of Saegertown, as it has been for 136 years. It continues today.
Hi, my name is Carol Orr. Tonight I would like to talk to you about the name of our town and the McGill House. Our town was not always named Saegertown. In 1955, the people of the town voted, and by one vote, they decided to remove a second S from the name Saegertown. Before that, it was named Alden's Mills. In 1800, it was known as McGill Settlement. Well, Patrick and Arthur McGill were born in Ireland. They came to the United States and settled in eastern Pennsylvania, where they had a wagon business, and they would deliver supplies to the Continental Army. In 1792, they ventured northwestern Pennsylvania, where they had heard of the beauty and the fertility of the French Creek Valley. They must have liked it here, because 4 years later, they brought their families. Patrick McGill built a house. The house was built in 1802 and is the oldest original structure in Crawford County. It was originally about 1.5 stories high. It was made of rough-hewn logs that were dovetailed at the corners, and the foundation came from stone from nearby French Creek. The first floor had 2 rooms equal in size, 13 by 7 feet. And when you entered, you would go into the parlor. Now that was the main living area for the family. That's where they would gather. They would do their normal daily chores like making clothing, sharpening their tools, that sort of thing. Along the center wall of that room was a chimney, and there was a fireplace that opened into both that room and the kitchen, which was adjacent. There's a flag outside the McGill house, and it's from the War of 1812. Patrick and Arthur hauled timber so that they could build structures for the war, and Patrick wanted to get involved, so he took a rifle, flints, gunpowder, and marched off to Fort LaBeouf, By the time he got there, his feet were blistered and sore, and it was shortly after that that he heard of the victory of the Battle of Lake Erie. In 1832, Patrick heard that his brother Arthur was very ill. So he walked the 2/3 of a mile to Arthur's home, and nobody knows what the two brothers talked about while they were there. But when Patrick got home, he was in a good mood. He took his coat off, he laid down to rest, and he died. A few days after he was buried, his brother Arthur also died. Obviously, the two brothers did almost everything together. The McGill men were known for their integrity. They were educated. They founded this important new settlement where we live now, Saegertown. Well, now the barns, the outbuildings, and those people are gone, but the building still stands in Saegertown. It's over 200 years old, and it's been used as a residence from 1804 until the year 2000. At that time, a local resident, Dr. Mary Beth Hageman, bought the place. She was a McGill descendant, and she preserved it and made it into a museum. In 2009, the Saegertown Heritage Society took over the building, and today it's open for tours. June through October, on the first Saturday of every month at 11 o'clock, we offer tours for anyone who's interested. We're also very willing to schedule special tours for someone by appointment. We need to learn from the past and how ingenious people were. We sometimes get caught up in all of our technology today and forget that our ancestors did all of these things in a very clever way to get us to where we are today. And I think it's important for our children to know about the history of our towns.
Hello, I'm Doug Smith, and I'm here to talk about the Seer House. And the Seer House was originally a piece of tract land that was purchased from the McGills, who were the first people in the area, and it was purchased by Saeger, Oliver Saeger. Oliver Saeger happens to be the nephew of Daniel Saeger, of which who the town is named after, Saegertown. So one of the interesting things about Oliver Saeger is that after all what he had done as far as building the town out of a trackless farmland, one of the interesting things is he built this house, and the house was started in 1885, and then almost completed in 1888 as far as we know. Now the reason I say almost completed is we don't really think that Oliver Saeger ever got a chance to live in this house. And by 1888, he had gone bankrupt. So the house went into receivership, and then it passed through many different people who had lived in the house for short periods of time. And unfortunately, the house was going into disrepair. So after a few different families had owned the house was going into disrepair. Another Saeger stepped to the plate and bought the residence. And that was a Saeger who was an attorney from Cleveland, Edwin. And he used the house as a vacation home for his extended family. So we actually got letters from some of his family, some of the extended family who spent their summers here in the Saegertown. So once again, after Edwin and his wife had passed away, the house then went through different ownerships once again. So after a few owners, again in 1923, the house was bought by Kirkpatrick's, who had a car dealership in Meadville. And I always say it was a second grand phase for the house, because Kirkpatrick's owned from 1923 to 1953. And during that time, they did a lot of the renovations that the house was known for. As far as they redid the porch and expanded it, a lot of additions were made in the on the outside of the house. So it really took it to another grand phase. And the other thing they really did, they worked on the property. So one of the interesting stories that they always told us was, one day the kids said, "Dad, we want to make a lot of money. How can we do that?" He said, "Oh, you got to dig for uranium." So okay. So he said he went to work. He came back, and his kids had dug a big hole in the yard. And he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, we're digging for uranium." So they didn't find uranium, but they did end up putting a cement pond in. So again, they put flowers around it, made it a centerpiece as far as their yard. So after the Kirkpatricks had sold the house, then again the house went through another phase of deterioration. And the house was continually deteriorating until Bill and Ruth Ann Winters bought the house in 1993. But what we found out was Bill and Ruth Ann Winters were known to have been a couple that would buy houses that were sorely dilapidated. And their intention was to restore them to a place where somebody would buy them, pick up what they had done, and then move forward and make the house where they need to be. So one of the interesting things is that when we talked to them about buying the house, we were actually interviewed. So there's 3 people that wanted the house. And one group wanted to make it a bed and breakfast. So Bill and Ruth Ann said, nope, not on the list. It needs to be a family home. The next group, they thought, well, they have good intentions, but I don't think they can do it. So we actually had an interview process in which we had to prove ourselves worthy to buy the Seger house. And the thing also about Bill and Ruth Ann was that to show what kind of people they were and how it was a labor of love. And that is that when they bought the house for, I believe it was $44,000, they put all the money into it as far as a lot of restorations, the outside, inside. And of course, Bill had Winters Plumbing and Heating, so did all the construction of the guts of the house, electrical and plumbing. And at the end, they gave us a list of all the receipts that they had, and add to the price of the house, they made a total of $600 for all the work they had done. So truly, they were very responsible for the house being what it is, and that was their labor of love. When I came back in 1993, I started my practice in Meadville. And when I was a child, I used to walk and also ride my bicycle past the house. I used to always say, it sure would be nice if somebody would take that house and make it from a Halloween house into a Christmas house. So it's one of the things that we always thought that it would be neat to do. So when we bought the house in 1995, that was our goal, is to make this a Christmas house. So living in the house has been interesting because one of the things is, it's not a museum. This was our home. So we do have a smattering of antiques throughout the house, but no, the house is still our home. And it is something that's been interesting to live in. Certainly, it's kind of neat to see people drive by, take photographs of the house. And it's kind of also interesting that once in a while, we'll get a random picture in the mail. Some people send and say, I was in Saegertown, happened to drive by, and I decided I was going to take a couple pictures of your home. I hope you don't mind. So it's been very interesting living here.
Hi, I'm Kevin Schlosser, and I'd like to talk to you about Seertown Beverages. I am the current owner, and we have owned it since 2005. Saegertown Beverages, today, we employ 20 people, and we have 2 main products, spring water and steam distilled, and we have 4 production lines. We bottle all sizes from 8 ounce up to 5-gallon containers, and we currently do our own label, which is Eureka Springs, which we hold on to the history of the spring. And we do a lot of custom labels, which we are in casinos, New York City hotels. We have a major drugstore chain. So our geographic delivery zone is basically the Midwest to the East Coast, and we go all up and down the eastern United States. I've lived here my whole life. So I've had the pop when I was a kid. Today we're just doing water, and the interesting part is we try to hang on to the historical part as well as updating to the new standards for the FDA and to have a current food plant. So that's been a challenge, but we've always tried to hold on to the history as well. Well, I mean, it makes me feel good that we're employing local people. We bring a lot of commerce in and out of Saegertown. We have, we're a wholesaler, so there's a lot of semi-loads of water coming in and out of town. So we've held business in town, and like I say, we've tried to hold on to the historical aspect and keep the facade of the building as original as we can. Well, we've had to bring it up to today's standards for a food plant. So we've refinished the entire inside of the plant. We've put automation in. We have a robot that we use for stacking. So the equipment had to be upgraded and modernized, of course. On the small production line, we start out with a depalletizer, then it goes into a descrambler. You'll see that bottles go down the production line to an air rinser, which basically inverts the bottles and puts deionized air into the bottle. Then the bottle turns right side up, going into the filler. We have a 36 head filler, 12 head capper. So after the bottles are filled and capped, they proceed down the line. We laser code every bottle so we know exactly what time and day and what production line they were produced on. Then we label the bottles, which again we do our own. We have our own label, which is Eureka Springs, and then the vast majority of our production is custom label, so the customer can put their own branded name on the bottles, and then it's packed into cases and palletized and shipped out. Yeah, our future plans, we have more automated production coming to the plant. We're not eliminating any employees, it just makes it easier and faster. So our objective is to produce more water in the same amount of time.
I'm Dale Hunter, the 6th generation of hunters to live in or around Saegertown. And my family was undertakers in this town, and it consisted of 4 generations that lasted 135 years. Well, Wilson was my double great-grandfather, and he started the funeral business in 1850 in Saegertown. He just started out with what appears to be a barn, but it was adequate to put horses and carriages, and also he had a shop where he could build coffins, and he made furniture. Now he had to make the furniture because that was kind of his livelihood to a certain point until his business got going. And the records show he used to sharpen hand saws as well, and he got 25 cents for sharpening a handsaw. Frank, actually his name was Francis Marion Hunter, but he always went by Frank. He started the funeral home in 1910, that is the brick structure. And while he was, at that time, the funeral home was making furniture as well as buying and using commercial furniture to sell. That was on one side of the structure, and then the other side was open to be a chapel. Well, Gordon did succeed Frank in the business. Well, Gordon served on the boards of the cemetery and the school boards, and I'm a member of council, and he was instrumental in being there when they put the water system in town in 1910. And I think I said earlier that he helped construct the new 1927 fire truck at the time. And but anyway, my father, I think we said he was a gifted man, and he truly was. And he could compose music in addition to doing all these other great things. He became mayor just by a write-in vote, so that says a lot too for him. As we said, the fire department calls came into the funeral home, and there was no 911 as we know it today. And so the emergency calls were, for example, if they needed an ambulance, well, the funeral hearse was converted to an ambulance for transportation. And that went on for a number of years. Well, early on, it was a bucket brigade in the 1850s. And it was necessary for everybody to have a bucket. And when the fire bell rang, and it was a bell, it wasn't a siren, you had to respond with the bucket or you could be fined. That was the start of it, so that would be the bucket brigade. And then about 1895 is when they got the first fire chief, because they had other fires that were getting out of hand and stuff, and apparently it wasn't very well organized. So they tried to start out with a chief, and truthfully that's the day that we mark, that is the fire department marks the beginning of a bona fide fire department in 1895. So in 1910, when the water system came in, we had hydrants so they could use a hose cart. It was a hand-drawn hose cart, but at least they had water they could funnel through a hose instead of just carrying buckets. And then you get up towards in the 1940s, when World War II was going, that's all we had were those 2 trucks. And it's interesting to note here that all the men were off to war at that time. And they made arrangements for the high school kids, which from here was just across the street a little ways. They made arrangements for the seniors, boys, to leave to respond to a fire call because there was only a couple of fellas, and they were elderly, that could drive the trucks. All right, let's just say a building is a building and a business is just a business until you connect the people with them. Then you know that you're in a Saegertown where I grew up, and I raised my family here, and I take a lot of pride in that. And I'm sure anybody else who lives here feels pretty much the same. And of course, my wish is may the tradition continue.
Okay, my name is Jan Ryan Metzler, and the topic I'm interested in is all the stores, businesses, and so forth that were on Main Street in the period of time that I lived here, which was from 1941 through 1961. For the amount of businesses and stuff that were in Saegertown at that time, which was like 25 or 26, just on the Main Street alone, but there was a sign outside of town that said population was 999. And I really don't believe the years I was here that we ever probably did reach over about 1,000 people. Well, on the one side, coming from up by where the dairy aisle is now, which is right near where the new roundabout has gone in, and then going to the south, the first little store we came to was a mom and pop store called Holcomb's. Next door, I think, in line was Tom Fortuna's furniture store, and it was there forever. It was a large store, and he had appliances and furniture. It was 2-story. Next to that was a restaurant that was there for a lot of years. Had several owners, Palmer's, McGinnis's, I think Brownie's in later years. And then we come on down to the Red and White store. And that was a great store. It was run by a Kenneth Smith family. And the whole family, at one point or other, worked in the store. Kleckner and Wade was come along probably in the very early 50s, I believe, late 40s, early 50s. And they were our first probably really big hardware store that we had. Next would have been Saegertown, well, we called it the Saegertown Market. It went under different names, and it was a fairly good-sized grocery store also. And then there was a little tiny barber shop that was just about like one-room size, owned by a man by the name of Charlie Walters. But it was a very, very small place. But I can't remember if it only had one chair or not. Wow. Yeah, Cribb's store was a real neat store. Actually, they had somewhat of a restaurant in there. They had a great little ice cream counter up front. You could get milkshakes Sundays, just ice cream cones and whatever. They had a little bit of everything in there. Mr. Cribbs was a JP. They had the biggest, I would say, magazine selection, newspaper selections, and all the kids in town were able to get their comic books there for a dime. Next one would have been Raymond Ross's Esso station. He had a garage in the back, and Raymond was a very busy man around town. He manned his garage, and he also was mayor at one time. Yeah. Okay. And next would have been Bill's White Diner. It was an old dining car that had been converted into a restaurant. It was quite a popular place. I don't recall it was open evenings for dinner, but it was open breakfast and lunch times. And then next would be the big complex, which sits there now, that had a lot of things in it over the years. There was a kraut factory, there was a sausage factory, and later on it became the big Baldwin Laboratories, which also went by the name of Dwin. Starting on the other side of the street was Ori Akeley's Mom and Pop store, the Reformed Church. Next would be the Odd Fellows building, and in that was a dairy bar that Raymond Ross's wife Mildred started. And they had probably one of the very first frozen custard machines there was around this part of the country. And also, my mother worked there, and also one of the ladies that worked there with her was Winky Johnson. And if you're familiar with this area, Eddie's Footlong hot dog stand that got started out on the Conneaut Lake Road was Mrs. Johnson, so they started there about that same time. Next on the west side of the street is the town park, which the memorial that was there at that time is no longer there. It had all the pictures, or all the names of all the service people that were in all the wars. And there's a little girl sitting in front of that, which was me, and at that time I was probably about 3 years old. Next was a drugstore that burnt down in 1950. There had been a doctor's office in part of it, and a drugstore in the other part. Next would be the post office. And then was Dr. Bertram's clinic. And beyond that was, for a long time it was a vacant lot, but it became Merchants National Bank. Beyond the bank was a small gas station, which I don't remember too much about. And then lastly was Joe's Drive-In Restaurant, which was a very popular restaurant at that time for all the teenagers. All the kids in town worked there, and it was just a fun place. None of these stores, as I knew them then, are still around. A good many of the buildings are still standing with other uses in today, but there was a lot of good stores in Saegertown at that time.
I'm Mike Marley, former longtime resident of Saegertown, Pennsylvania, and I'm very proud to be that. I'm going to talk about Saegertown's history with the railroads that have come through here. In February of 1961, I was 12 years old and in the 6th grade. And I was suddenly awakened at 2:45 a.m. on a cold February morning with a thundering crash and screeching metal that I have never heard before in my life. And I woke up wondering what in the world was going on in my town. My sister and I ran into the hall. My dad and mom were already there. My father said to calm us down, I think there may have been a little trouble on the Erie-Lackawanna Railroad tracks, only 150 yards from our house. So indeed, that was the case. We wanted to go over right away, but my father said, wait until morning. So 6 o'clock came, and the time had come to go over. And we ran over, I with my little Browning camera in my hand and a couple of rolls of Kodak 126 black and white film. I had never seen such carnage. Huge cars piled on top of one another for the distance of probably 3/4 to 7/8 of a mile. People lined up on both sides of the tracks. Debris, contents of the railroad tracks, coffee, candy, huge construction motors from New York had been being shipped southwest. And I saw boxes of Red Ball Jets tennis shoes everywhere. Later on, we were given permission to take those if we could find some pairs by the railroad officials at the scene. And we happily marched off with new Red Ball Jet tennis shoes from the great train wreck of 1961. Fortunately, no one was injured. To my astonishment, huge cranes, 2 huge cranes, one on either end, from the Erie-Lackawanna Railroad, cleared the eastbound track for traffic before noon of that same day. It was just amazing. Railroad engineers later determined that a journal from a very heavy flat car loaded with the construction engines that we mentioned before sheared. Let me tell you a little bit about a journal in a train. A journal is a huge rotational pin, 10 inches in diameter, probably 25 to 30 inches long in length, and would weigh in the neighborhood of 650 pounds. To shear one would be physically impossible. The mechanical engineers, investigative engineers from the railroad at the time, said they couldn't believe their eyes. That did cause the wreck. And if you know anything about journal pin, It's Martinized cast iron, which is horrendously strong. You're probably talking in the neighborhood of 6,000 to 7,000 tons of pressure would have to be placed to even begin the shearing process. So it was surmised that that particular car had a history of strenuous incidences that would lead up to such a thing as shearing a railroad journal. That connecting pin is immensely, immensely strong. So it surprised the engineers and shocked me. What shocked me even more was the looks on their faces. If anything, were more astonishing than our looks when we saw the wreck. It was the looks on the engineers' faces when they discovered why it happened. I loved having a railroad through my town. It was something I could look at. But the rhythmic sound of a large mile-long freight coming through town at night was an elixir, and it would put me to sleep with incredible ease, and something I would appreciate even to this day, and wish we would have more of it.
Hi, I'm Andrea Marana Stearns, and I'm here to talk about the wonderful Saegertown High School Marching Band. In 1953, my dad, Carl Marana, was the first football coach of Saegertown High School, and he did not have a band to play at halftime. So he went to the orchestra director at the time and asked the gentleman if he could make him a band. And the orchestra director said yes, and what a band that gentleman did create. The band became a very intricate, high-stepping band because of this gentleman's expertise. They became nationally known, and there was a sign at the north end of Saegertown, where the credit union is located now, that said, "Welcome to Saegertown, home of the nationally famous Saegertown area high school band." And it was there for many, many years, and people just couldn't get over a band from such a small town and what they had done in such a short period of time. They, of course, Kennywood Park was always a highlight. They had a big parade there in Pittsburgh, and they always had a battle of the bands, and Saegertown usually always got first or second prize. And they also, the Chicago Tribune in 1959, paid their way to play at Soldiers Field in Chicago. The Tribune paid for their way there, their way back, and also put them up in a hotel room. And they did what they called a light routine. Everybody collected Band-Aid boxes when they were metal. Mr. Powell, he was an electrician that was a band parent and very interested in everything the band did, and he made lights, and we had strings of lights down our arm and on our pant leg. And my mother and dad were fortunate to go to Chicago with the band that time, and of course everybody at halftime was busy and wondering, where's Saegertown? Nobody ever heard of Saegertown. And when the kids put the lights on, the lights in the stadium went out, and my mother and dad said you could have heard a pin drop. Those kids' performances were unbelievable, and afterwards my mom and dad said they got a standing ovation. Well, their greatest was Sweet Georgia Brown and St. Louis Blues. They'd always do a shuffle step, a step, kick, back, turn, and I said every time they went to a parade, they always did it along the parade route and also in front of the judges, because everybody always said, "Here comes the Saegertown Band," and everybody knew to move back. In one year, the band had been to a parade in Tionesta, and they were on their way back from Tionesta, and they got stopped in Titusville, and they were held up because there was a parade in Titusville. So the band got off the bus, suited up, got at the end of the parade, and they won first prize. And the band parents, too, were so interested in their kids, and I said they worked right along. I said many dinners that they had, and we'd sell subscriptions to magazines, and we had calendar drives. And I said everybody just took a big interest. And when you were in the band, everybody always said, "Oh, the kids are in the band." But honestly, I really think that when you were in the Saegertown Band, you were very, very proud to be a member of that organization.
My name is Alice DelMeo, and I'd like to share my story about finding a treasure 60 years ago that added to the heritage of Saegertown. We've always had a connection with Saegertown 12 Apostles Lutheran Church. Like most kids, I would attend church because my parents made me or because they took me. Interestingly enough, my mother's parents were married in August of 1905 at 12 Apostles. My parents were married in June of 1941 at 12 Apostles, and I was married in August of 1976 at 12 Apostles. So I was away from town for a while, but when I moved back to Saegertown about 25 years ago, I purchased a house just about a block from the church and became an active member again. Interestingly enough, about 10 years ago, we were preparing for a new minister. I was working in the vacant pastor's office. I was unloading the books from the shelves and dusting the books off and reloading the shelves with books, and I found a dilapidated box of slides. I set it aside, finished my job a couple hours later, and then saw those slides. So I sat there on the floor and I started to pick those slides up, and I started to hold them to the light of the window. And after about 2 or 3 slides, I realized what a treasure I had in my hand, because I was looking at pictures that our beloved Pastor Baker had taken back in 1957 and 58 when that education building was being built where I was seated. But the story gets better, because as I looked at the slides a little longer, I realized, oh my gosh, these were pictures of my father's construction crew building the education building. I mean, there were pictures of Willie Bradish and Freddie Tyers and Chick Webb and Don Favor and Tom Hughes and my dad, Jim Getty, and there they were in their work clothes and their work caps, which we call ball caps today. It was just wonderful to see those pictures, and I know that the folks that I attended church with at that time, 10 years ago, had never seen these pictures. So I took them home and put them on my projector, and had seen how much things had changed in the environment of the church. Not only were there pictures of the building going up, but also pictures of our dedication service 8 months after the groundbreaking of the building. And here in June of '58 were members of our church filing out of the church after Sunday morning's worship that day, and filing up Erie Street to go to the building next door, our new education building. And of course, all the men were in business suits and ties and business hats, and the women were all in dresses, most of them carrying purses and had hats on and carrying gloves or had gloves on. And there's pastor's wife, Garnet Baker, corralling those of us that were in the children's choir that day, and I remember we sang, "Bless this house, O Lord, we pray." And there were also pictures of us milling around outside the new building, inside the hallways of the building. There were pictures of my 10-year-old self sitting with other Sunday school kids inside the Sunday school rooms with children kids that I grew up with and graduated from high school with. Well, I'm so excited to have found these, because not only does it become an archives for our church at 12 Apostles, but also for the heritage of Saegertown, and certainly to show as part of the history of Saegertown.
My name's George Trauner. I'm the current CEO of Bethesda Lutheran Services that's located here in Woodcock Township, very close to Saegertown. In 1919, an individual by the name of William Wise, his land was located on Route 86 in Woodcock Township, had a dream of giving his farm and all its assets to help youth, children without families. Back then, of course, it was an orphanage. And he donated all of this land to the Lutheran Pittsburgh Synod of the Lutheran Church, with the understanding that it would be a home for kids to be able to grow and be able to go into society with the skills that they learn from this type of living. So in 1919, the charter was made for Bethesda Children's Home at the time. Started out with 20 youth living in the farmhouse that Mr. Wise donated, and then it continued to grow throughout the years. And then in the 1960s, late 1960s, the error was to get rid of orphanages and place kids into foster care. So at that time, Bethesda started a few other projects. We got more into behavioral health and started to have kids that needed to be removed from their homes or community because of behavioral problems, and then they came and lived with us. We continued to grow. Today, as we sit 100 years later, we serve over 900 youth, and these youth come from all over Crawford County and Erie County. We work a lot with school districts here. Saegertown High School is where we work a lot with our kids. Currently, as we evolved from the orphanage, where we are now is we of course have our residential care that is located on our campus, but we also have an on-ground school that we work very closely with the Intermediate Unit 5 and Pencrest School District. And we do the alternative education here on the campus in Woodcock Township for Conneaut, Crawford Central, and Pencrest. We also have a large child partial program where that's more mental health based, and we have 60 seats where kids are brought in and we give them more mental health treatment, and they're educated here also. We also have a pretty large foster care program here in the area with some homes in Saegertown. And we also do a lot of community services in Crawford County and other counties that surround. About 4 years ago, the board of directors, working with myself, found that we no longer fit the name Bethesda Children's Home. Granted, we still had kids live with us, although we finally realized that we provide a lot more than just a place for kids to live. And that's when we decided and went through a process that our new name would become Bethesda Lutheran Services. And the unique thing about it is we have also a new logo. And if you look at our logo, you'll see that there is still the house. And within that house, there's a light on. But in the window of that house, there's a cross. And that's still our Lutheran affiliation. But the important thing to remember is in the background we have mountains, and every day our youth climb mountains, and sometimes they fall. But the one thing about the staff and the team at Bethesda Lutheran Services is that we always pick them up and help them move on, because the main thing that we're here for is to give them promising futures.
My name is Kevin Byers. I'm here to tell you about our business, the building at Grant Street. From what we know, the building was an armory during the 1860s. And then from pictures we have that it was a feed mill. It was a GLF building, feed mill. And we have pictures with farm animals, and they unloaded horses and coal, and a lot of trade traffic came through our building in Saegertown. In the back of the building, we have photos of corrals where they brought horses and cattle and off the trains into town and out of town exporting. And then we found horseshoes and branding irons and stuff in the property as we were cleaning it up when we purchased it. Next thing that we know about the building after was that it progressed into different businesses through the years. It was the feed mill, and then I know Bob Ocker from Saegertown sold and fixed snowmobiles and mowers in there. And then after that, from what I know, Bob Schilling is who I bought it from. He used it for Meadville wallpaper and paint. And then after he retired from that business, he opened up a used furniture store, and that's what it was when I bought it. How I ended up with the building was one day I was looking for a table, and a friend said, "Oh, you gotta stop and check out this cool used furniture store." And I walked in and asked him what he had on sale, and he said, "I will sell you the whole building." So he took me through a tour of the building. There's a apartment in the upstairs that he had lived in with his wife. And there was an elevator to the second story, and that's how I ended up. I couldn't sleep for like a week, and then that's when I ended up purchasing the building. Didn't even know I wanted it. After I bought the building, I sold antiques, and we did that for quite a few years, and then remodeled it. It was the inside of a barn when I purchased it, but we've remodeled the entire inside of the building, and now it's our jewelry store. In the jewelry store, we do more custom designs, and and jewelry, and then we also have a ladies' boutique, and then we have a large gift shop. I think it's an asset to the community of Saegertown to keep the building. I mean, it's one of the oldest buildings. The history is rich of from the beginning till current, to keep it in the condition that it's in now. Well, the building also seems to attract customers from all over. They come and they come to our jewelry store because they hear about it, and they pull in the parking lot and they see an old feed mill, and when they walk inside, they're amazed of what we've done with it. I think it's an asset to the community.
All right. Hello, my name is Maria Biter, and I have the privilege of working at the Crawford County Care Center, and I'm here to talk about the Crawford County home and farm. The first tract of land was purchased in December of 1851 under the assembly of that year. The act stated, from the assembly, it stated to provide for the erection of a home, for the employment and the support of the poor and needy in Crawford County. If a person was caught begging on the street, they were sent to the home. If a person became injured, say with a broken leg or some other accident, they were also sent to the home. Or if, say, a person was widowed, they would go to the home. And the reason being they had no means to support themselves. The first home was called the Poor House, and it was a 2-story building, and it was first occupied in 1854, and that was the only home on the property until 1868. In 1868, a 3-story building was added to the property. The county home was called the Smith's Institute, and that was from the years 1878 to 1894. And the reason why it was called the Smith's Institute, Dr. Henry Smith and his son Rodney Smith were the primary physicians for the facility, and they were well-known physicians in the county. The first barn was built in 1884 on the property. No other barns were built until 1941, when all the rest of the barns were built. And the home was self-sufficient. The livestock on the farm produced all the food that the residents needed, as well as the gardens that were planted. So it was a self-sufficient farm. It was very nice because residents had purpose. They either had a job out on the farm, or they were able to work in the kitchen, or maybe in the other rooms, maybe sweeping floors. So they had purpose in life. In 1977, approximately, is when the Crawford County Commissioners started phasing out the farm. And the reason being, it was difficult for them to find a herdsman or a person that would be responsible for taking care of the farm. In 1987, the OBRA Act was passed by Congress. It was a federal nursing home reform act, and that changed the way our government looked at nursing homes. So our commissioners decided it would be best to build a new facility. So that's when they started planning for the new nursing home. And in 1989 is when the new home was finished, and it is called the Crawford County Care Center. Years ago, people didn't have a means to support themselves. And with today's laws, we have workman's comp, we have our Social Security. There's all those things available for tragic times for people. So years ago, there weren't those things in place. So it was very important for people to have a place to go and receive some help. If When I look at the records from the poorhouse, years ago, people would come, and once they were better, they would leave. So it was just a place to receive help when they needed it.
My name is Charles Orr. I am the president of the Saegertown Cemetery Board of Directors. Today I'm going to be telling you some short stories about items in the Saegertown Cemetery. All right, Saegertown Cemetery has over 3,000 people buried in it, so it's not a little cemetery. But the oldest person buried there was 104 years old, was a Charlotte McGill, 104 years and 23 days even. But she was a member of the McGill family that was in the name of Saegertown before it was Saegertown. The first person to be buried there was in 1859, was George Grubb. The Saegers are buried in Saegertown Cemetery too. We have a large marker around the 16 graves of Saegers that are buried in Saegertown Cemetery. Two of the Saegers are on the original board of directors for the Saegertown Cemetery. The Saegertown High School had senior class projects, and many of the people through the years had worked in the cemetery to help keep maintenance and help us put markers back and other things. But in this particular year, 13 students from the class of 2014 came in and helped us build a French Creek trail in the back of the cemetery. The trail is not real long, but what they did is they put in wood chips, they dug the trenches for them, they dug holes for cement slabs, for 2 granite benches, and did the raking, all this wheelbarrow. It was not done in a short length of time. It took quite a while. But the trail goes back to a spot in the cemetery where you can look out over a bluff right into French Creek. Now, the reason this was done was a suggestion by Chester Morfinski, who's the vice president of the cemetery, saying that this was needed. That we have so much sun directly on the cemetery, and in the summer, it's unbearable just to stand there and watch for things. By going back into the woods and through the trail, you can sit there in calm and peace and watch what's happening. The trail, at the end of the trail is this wooden barrier, so we have kids come back, wouldn't fall over the bluff to the creek, and 2 granite benches that were donated by funeral homes and local merchant for people to sit there. Young and old both can come back and enjoy it, and it's just a great place to visit, and we invite everyone to come and do so. There's a woman and her 3 sons that came to the Saegertown Cemetery one morning after they had called me to find out if there was plots available for her and her husband. Her husband is a Vietnam veteran who was dying from Agent Orange. And we did find the location of the property, and there was 2 graves available, and they left that same morning. On the way home, they got a phone call which said he died that same day. So it was a sad day in their lives, but we did have a place for him to be buried. Coming down the road to the cemetery was 13 motorcycles with veterans, with flags on the back of the motorcycles, leading the hearse to be for his burial. The burial was a typical burial for a veteran with 14-gun salute, bagpipes, and bugle. Very moving, very sustained of feeling, serene, safe feeling. But as we were walking back to the van, everything got real quiet. And I had looked down at my watch at that time, and because I had someplace I had to go later. But we turned around, and the funeral director was one side, one of the people from the veteran brigade was on the other. And we look up in a pine tree behind the gravesite, an eagle sat in a pine tree right behind his grave. The veteran took out a camera and went click, click, click. The whole time the eagle sat up in this tree. And At the time he got ready to fly away, he went click and did a small video of it. I wished we could see it. But I looked back at my watch and found it had been 15 minutes that eagle had sat in that tree for his funeral. Amazing. As I was walking back down to the gravesite to help out, the pastor for the service says, "Do you guys charge extra for the eagle?" Of course not, but the eagle's there quite frequently, and we do have pictures of him. About 3 months later, this gentleman's wife is back up in the spot where he was buried, and they had brought the marker in. On the marker, in the upper right-hand corner, there is an eagle based on that day.
All right, hi, I'm Dan Cole. I'm the commander of Saegertown Memorial Post 205 of the American Legion. We've been in Saegertown since 1967. The American Legion is the largest veterans organization in the United States. We're very proud of that. Our main goal is to help veterans and their families right along with the community because they go hand in hand. Anything we do for the community comes back to help the veterans. Anything we do for the veterans always helps the community. We go out of our way to help the youngsters in the area. Our American Legion baseball team has two. We have a senior and we have a junior. The seniors are from all around this area, not just from Saegertown. Juniors are the same way. We have them in from Linesville and different areas. Our facility is probably the best in this entire area. We offer it free to Saegertown High School baseball. I think they have 2 teams. We also have a fall ball team that comes out of the high school, and it's offered to them free. We don't charge for anything. We pay for all the upkeep, and believe me, we keep it in very good shape. We monetarily help a lot of organizations that aren't connected to us. The Erie Soldiers and Sailor Home is a big one. We financially contribute to them to help the residents up there have a better time of it and know that they're not forgotten just because they're in a rest home. We also like to support local areas and groups. One is the Saegertown Area Library. The other is the programs that the American Legion likes to use for educational purposes, and that we've had extraordinarily good luck with the teachers in Saegertown High School getting the kids to enter the essay contest and different functions like that. You know, our post many years ago took it upon itself to have a Carl Marana scholarship. 4 years ago, we increased the Carl Marana scholarship to $1,000 a year up to 4 years. Some of our other educational programs are, we support the Saegertown High School journalism class. They travel to Harrisburg for competitions, and we usually totally fund that. The American Legion is important to the Saegertown area community because our members are from all over. They're just not from the borough of Saegertown. We have them from other states that are members here. They contribute enormously to our funding so that we can contribute to the funding elsewhere. We have your you have your active members like myself, then you have your auxiliary, you have the sons, and then you have social. Now our social members, 3 times the population of what the rest of us are. But when they come in and they dine with us, they, have their drinks, play their small games of chance. All that goes back to our funding, and we're able to reach out and help. There's a lot of funding that we put out for the area that people just never realize where it's coming from.
Hi, my name is Stacy Hetrick. I teach at Saegertown High School. I've been there about 25 years, and I'm here today to talk about the Panther Press, Saegertown High School's journalism program. I can't tell you how the Panther Press got started because I wasn't there, but I can tell you that we have issues in our archives going back to at least 1968. So it has been called other things, the Panther Flash, the Panther Paw, throughout those years, but there's always been a journalism program at the high school, and many stories have been told over the years. I took over the program in 2006, and I had no prior journalism experience, but I was very excited to revive the program that had been dormant for a couple of years. So one of the first things I did was get in touch with the Meadville Tribune. We formed a partnership, and they agreed to print our paper on newsprint, and that we would find a way to make sure that every student in the school got a free newspaper, and that we would have newspapers to distribute throughout the community. The very first issue that came out in October of 2006, we had a whole school-wide assembly, and Jean Moriant, who was the publisher of the Tribune at that time, came, and we recognized the staff, and everyone came up on stage, and when they left the auditorium, everyone had a free newspaper in their hands, and that was a very moving moment, and we've never looked back from there. So in that time, there have been many stories that the Panther Press has covered. So we definitely have covered the sports scene. We have District 10 winning teams. We have one year we had all 3 of our sports teams in the spring win D10 titles. We had a very special front cover for that. So sports coverage, of course, in any high school is a huge part of what we do. And that has evolved in our social media as well. We have a Twitter feed with almost 1,000 followers, and the kids tweet live from every event. Now we're into Instagram. So they're definitely covering everything that's happening with sports in the school. Other interesting aspects of the Panther Press, there's a senior issue every year where the seniors get to have their final say. We have a survey where they get to, reflect on their time at the high school. Another thing that the students cover is local policy and decisions that are happening within the school. They attend school board meetings. They advocate for changes in the school. Some of the other interesting aspects of it are local history. Linda Fink taught history at Saegertown High School for years, and she did a regular column in the Panther Press called There's No Place Like Home, and she wrote about everything from the beverage plant to the hotels to famous people who had been in and out of Saegertown. And her very last column in the Panther Press also included her article announcing her retirement. So, of course, the Panther Press covers politics. We've had people attend candidate rallies all the way back to Bill Clinton. He was in town, and we had somebody there, quite a few years ago. In 2016, in the run-up to the election, the students were very divided in their views in the class, but they certainly were interested in keeping their finger on the pulse. One of the strongest relationships we've had as a high school journalism organization is with the Meadville Tribune, and they have provided their expertise. Their people come in and talk to the kids, and as a result of that, they've also picked up a lot of our stories. We've had somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 100 of our Panther Press stories published in the Meadville Tribune. At this time, the Panther Press is a multiple award-winning publication. We compete through the Pennsylvania School Press Association and the Pennsylvania Newspaper Association. Last year, we had state award winners in editorial cartoon. and feature writing. We're very proud of the hard work that the student journalists are doing, because without them to tell the stories in that local, very local community of the school, the stories would not be told. And the Panther Press reaches everyone in the school. The kids take the papers to the elementary school. They love to hand them out to their old teachers. And the younger students talk about maybe, someday I would like to work with the Panther Press, which is super exciting. So it has been just a real honor and privilege to be part of that here in the Saegertown community.
Hello, I'm Rhonda Kay, and I'd like to talk to you today about our Saegertown Women's Improvement Club. They have a long history. They're over 113 years old. Was established in 1906, August the 24th. A lady by the name of Mrs. Clara C. McLean decided one day that the ladies of Saegertown needed to do something productive with themselves. And what better way to do than to have a library and become active in the community. And that started the whole process. They had their first meeting on Main Street in a Mrs. George Patton's house. Then they decided to go further and have a home built on the side street here, which is still in existence. Originally it was built by Abigail Sager. And that's where they had their meetings. A library first was started with just a few books. From reading the ledgers, I also found out that they were documented clear back in 1906, and they had a Miss Minnie Hunter became the first librarian, and she then gave them a room in her home, and she developed and started the library from there. It went on and on, collecting books, moving from areas to areas. At one point, later on, this home that they had over here, we do tell the story of that. They had property adjacent to it, and they did sell it eventually, but they had put a tennis court in, the ladies did, for their club. But then they started to bicker among each other, and so the tennis court went out of favor. They sold that property and made a profit. Profit money they then put into Liberty bonds, which they still made more money. The interest that was made was like $34.59. All went back into buying books every time for the library as it moved on. For the last 20 years, our biggest funds come from the golf outing that we do each August at Venango Valley Inn. And all of the local sponsors and gifts are done from people and stores and businesses in the Saegertown area and all of the businesses, which is a really appreciated effort that they go above and beyond to continue helping, because all the money from the golf outings goes right back into the community. The first scholarship that we found when I was doing this research was in 1908. The ladies decided they would give $1 for the domestic science scholarship. And they were so proud of that, they thought, well, instead of just $1, let's just pay $4 and do the whole 4-year scholarship for that person. But we thought it was funny that the domestic science was the way to go at that time. Today, we do sponsor 6 scholarships: social studies, math, English, science, and 2 scholarships for the students who go to what used to be called VOTEC, but is now the Crawford County Technical Center. One for arts and one is for occupational advancements. So we're very proud of that. We've watched this community wonderfully evolve just in the last 2 years, with the roundabout and the redoing of the streets. We want to work more within the community and bring the community, especially the younger people, in.
Hi, I'm Heather Wakefield, and today I would like to talk to you about the Saegertown Area Library and its impact on the community. Way back in 1906, the library had been founded by the Women's Improvement Society, and it was in one room in Minnie Hunter's house, and she automatically became the librarian. And I've heard that the Women's Improvement Club did all kinds of fun, crazy theatricals and comedies and things to raise funds. And, so it really was part of the community. Well, in the early days, it was all donated books. There were just over 200 to start. And eventually Minnie Hunter couldn't keep it up anymore. I believe she passed away. It changed a few places, and then eventually they just couldn't keep it up anymore, so the books went to the high school. And again, there the tie-in is largely with the Women's Improvement Club, because they even said that the library was their reason for being to begin with, and their excuse for doing the crazy things they did. Well, after it closed down in the late 1940s or early 50s, then we didn't have a library in Saegertown for 40 years. And in the late 1970s, a group of community members got together and they really decided they needed a library here again. So it took from the late 70s until 1984, August of 1984. And again, they did fundraising through the community. They had to work with the borough to find a location. But finally, their dream was realized, and in August of 1984, the library opened actually in the building I'm sitting in right now, in what is now the Heritage Society. And again, it was about 600 donated books, donated by the whole community. Dr. Lucy Kirchner started out as the librarian for that year. And then they just went through a series of librarians, formed a board, filed the incorporation, all of that to get it up and running. And right away, it was a big success. The circulation was nearly doubling at times in the early years. And it jumped from, I know the statistics, from 1988, the circulation was just over 2,400. A year later, it was 47 something. So, and by 1997, it had gone clear up to well over 17,000. So they managed to, between 1998 and 1999, when they opened across the street, with community events and donations, raise $100,000. The technology has changed immensely through the years. In the mid-90s, they were just getting computers for the first time. By the time we opened in the new building, we had computer stations connected to the internet for users. That we also offer gadget classes, so for people who get smartphones and don't know how to use them, they can do that. And we've really still expanded our children's programming. The summer reading program started when it was still in this building. We're going strong still. We have a monthly book club 8 months out of the year, and that Judy Bedford, who is on my board of directors and is a retired English teacher, she leads book discussions with quite the fun group of ladies. Again, besides just having that internet access that a number of patrons do not have, the library is very important as a community hub. There isn't much meeting space in Saegertown, so people come and use our tables all the time for group meetings, for meeting with clients for the career center. And it's just a safe place to be. We have many kids, teenagers, who could be causing trouble if they were out roaming the streets. We make them behave in the library, but they want to be there. So they come in, hang out, use the computers, occasionally read a book. It's good.
Okay, hello. I'm Chuck Lawrence. I'm the borough manager in Saegertown. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about our industrial presence, particularly the Jordan Family Foundation. I think most people know that Saegertown is an industrial town. We have probably as many jobs as we do people. We have a new plant moving into town, and Lord's just invested $80 million in town, so we're pretty successful that way. I want to talk to you about back in 1965 when Chow Jordan actually started the Saegertown Manufacturing Corporation. And it had 150, 180 jobs per year. And then back in 2008, when he decided to retire and sell the business, he wanted to give something back to Saegertown. So he and his wife Evelyn and their daughters formed the Jordan Family Foundation. They put a sizable amount of money in, and it was made grants available to different organizations in town or different projects. Well, there's really been a ton of it, and like if you see trees around town or the gardens that have flowers and mulch in, they've done that. They bought equipment for us to help maintain it, like a Kubota so we can clear off the creek bank. People can enjoy French Creek when they're driving down Main Street. Other organizations like the fire department, we have a volunteer fire department, they've supported a bunch of equipment there and even put a new roof on the fire hall. The library, the same way. The Library Association, they have a lot of things like new computers, and they also had a new furnace, an air conditioner, and a hot water heater. We have the Heritage Society, and the same thing. They did a lot of things to upgrade their building, and also a new air conditioner and a heating system for that. And then we have the log cabin, the old McGill house that you'll probably hear about. It's the original log cabin. Well, they've done a lot of things to support that so they can keep it open and give tours on it. But overall, some of the projects that they've done also is like, if you've seen our lighted bridge on South Street, that's kind of a top thing. They supported half of that project, Christmas decorations. There's tons of stuff, flags that both American and the decorative flags, they've purchased those. They do a recycle project for electronics in town. Anybody in Borough can take their old electronics. They won't take them, the garbage won't take them anymore. The streetscape signs on Main Street. Then we did a creek bank restoration up at the recreation park where it was eroding away, and they actually supported a project where we stabilized that, but we made it look good. We just didn't put a bunch of cement blocks in to stop the water. It actually looks natural, sandstone in it and everything like that. The recreation park up there is probably one of the gems in town, and they did a lot for that. The Little League field is basically like PNC Park and one of the top in the whole western part of the state. But they put a fence around the basketball court so that cars don't park on it. They put new bleachers in. They did a canopy for the playground so the mothers can sit there and they aren't out in the sun during the day. They put a new parking lot in. New bathrooms up there, just tons of stuff up there. And because of that, Borough Council was really appreciative of that and all the other projects they did, so they decided to name the recreation park Jordan Park after Chow and Evelyn Jordan. So it was pretty nice. And of course, it was low-key because they aren't people that wanted a lot of fanfare. They just wanted Saegertown to be nice. And anybody that drives through or come and see us, you'll see that it really is a nice town, and a lot of it is because of the Jordan Family Foundation. Well, it's unbelievable, actually, if you think about it, because when you got to support all these projects I mentioned to you with the tax base, and you don't have to do that, you can put the taxes toward nice streets, and you see we've been able to pave every street in town, and all the buildings are in good shape and stuff like that. So it's been a win-win, and it isn't just we want the money to do this. It has to go through the foundation, and they make sure that it's a good project. But it's benefited everybody in town, and I think if you see, people are proud. They're taking care of their houses better and things like that. So all in all, it's been a godsend to the town. So.
Hi, my name is Judy Ocker, and I work for the French Creek Valley Conservancy. I've been immersed in everything French Creek for the last 20 years. And so today, obviously, I'm going to speak about French Creek and how it has affected Saegertown. When you come into Saegertown, you can hardly get here from any direction without crossing French Creek to get to Saegertown. And once you're in Saegertown, you can't go through town without noticing the creek because the town has done a wonderful job of highlighting the creek. French Creek actually starts up in Chautauqua County, New York, and it flows 117 miles south. And when it gets down here, people don't even realize every day when they drive past French Creek or even go fishing or kayaking in French Creek what's actually going on underneath that water. French Creek is a host to over 80 species of fish, and we also have 27 species of freshwater mussels or clams in French Creek. And just so you know how cool that is and what a spectacular number 27 is, if you take all the countries of Europe and add them together, they have 8. And right here in our backyard, we have 27 species of freshwater mussels. And we also have a really cool critter in French Creek called the hellbender salamander, which is a large salamander. It's Pennsylvania's largest salamander. It's the second largest salamander in the United States. We also have tons of species of birds. You can't hardly go down by the creek without seeing blue heron or bald eagle or some other sort of bird life. We have tons of species of birds, and during spring migration we have over 400 species of birds that come through the French Creek watershed in the fall and the spring during that migratory path. We also have over 3,000 species of native plants, so sometimes when you're kayaking down French Creek, you look off to the one side or the other, you're going to see some beautiful colors of maybe some swamp milkweed or perhaps some Turk's cap lilies. Just gorgeous, gorgeous flowers that bloom and stuff right along French Creek. It's just amazing to be around the creek. It's very aesthetically pleasing. It's known as a colonial stream. They say it looks the same today as it did back when George Washington came through. And so it is just an awesome thing, a great asset to have in the community that, as I said before, Saegertown has taken great advantage of. French Creek is a great recreational asset too, to bring people into town. People come here to kayak, to fish, to just hang out in the creek. Locals will actually go swimming in the creek or tubing down the creek. You can't drive past French Creek in the summertime without seeing canoes and kayaks on the creek or somebody fishing. It's just a really great asset for those kind of things, and it's not just the local people, it's also people come from miles and miles around because French Creek is known as a great place to kayak. And as you're kayaking down French Creek, if you start up at Venango and come through town, you are going to cross some really cool aspects of French Creek that you can't really see from the road. But it's just a really beautiful stretch of stream right here through Saegertown.
Hi, my name is Kathy Uglow. I'm the environmental educator for the Crawford County Conservation District. The Crawford County Conservation District was founded in 1956, and it basically is on the premise of local people knowing best how to handle local resources. For example, I wouldn't begin to tell you how to conserve something in Utah. Likewise, Northwest Pennsylvania to them might be rather a problem to resolve to. So that's how it works, and every county in the state has a conservation district. At our conservation district, we have a small staff. We have 7 people. We have a district manager, a watershed specialist, an agricultural resource specialist, dirt and gravel, low volume road technician, and a resource conservation specialist, an administrative assistant to keep us all together, and then myself as an environmental educator. So the Conservation District is housed at the Woodcock Creek Nature Center, and the Woodcock Creek Nature Center is nestled down on German Road at the base of Woodcock Dam. Woodcock Creek Nature Center and the Woodcock area offers many recreational and educational opportunities for the community. For example, we have programs inside the Nature Center, we have programs outside the Nature Center. Every year in the spring we offer a tree sale where we have seedlings. They're really lovely seedlings actually for the community to purchase, and the idea of this is that the funds go toward providing funding for our educational programming. So inside the Nature Center we have all kinds of activities and information and maps, and we even have a live fish, a worm bin, a bee observation hive, all those kinds of things. Outside the Nature Center we have a lot of different things to explore. We have a nature play area, which is extremely cool, and we're going to expand that this year and add an art component, but it has digging boxes and a seating area and an educational classroom made out of logs and things like that. It's located right next to our trail, which is the Peter A. Yeager Recreational Trail. We do a lot of things on that trail, nature walks obviously, but we have beaver activity and it runs by Woodcock Stream. So it's a really lovely short trail for families to enjoy. We have
native species butterfly garden, and that's a lot of fun because if you're into butterflies, you can see a lot of larvae. We raise monarchs there. I raised about 17 of them last year and released them. We have bat houses, so we also do a bat count in July, which is awesome, and we give our data to the Game Commission because we have one of the only remaining little brown bat colonies in this area because of the white nose syndrome and decline in that population. So it's very special that we can monitor the bats at our bat houses. We had a student intern who developed a bike share, and we have those bikes available for people to use. This was awesome because we were recycling bikes that Woodcock Township was collecting on their trash cleanup day. So she prevented them from going to the landfill. We partnered with Allegheny Bike Share, got them up and running, and now they're there and available for anyone who wants to use them anywhere around the nature center, the park, even up on Woodcock Dam. If you're a geocaching fan, we also have a 2-stage geocache located on our grounds. And I'm not going to say anything more and give away where it is, but it's there. So I mentioned before that if you go down our driveway, you can go into Steinbrook Park. We kind of oversee the park. We take care of it and nurture it and clean it and all those things. There are 2 shelters there for rental for picnics. There's also just regular picnic tables if you feel like hanging out at the park, getting some outdoor time. And the lovely thing about it is that Woodcock Creek flows right on the one edge of it. So it's wonderful. It's a fishing access area. It's a stocked stream, and we have a lot of fun. The public can really enjoy the park.
In the past, I have lived in Pittsburgh. I've lived in Dover, Delaware, and we settled about 26 years ago. We came back to Saegertown, which was my husband's hometown. I like the quiet life, the beauty of the area, the trees, the creek. We live very close to French Creek, and except for days when it's flooding, it's just beautiful to look out. Such a peaceful area and friendly people who are involved in their community.
My favorite thing about Saegertown is the friendliness of the people, along with being a less rush of everything. I taught school in Dover, Delaware for 35 years. I had grown up in Saegertown, but then retired back here because it's a quieter and nicer place to live.
One of my favorite things about Saegertown is the fact it's my hometown. I was born and raised here. I was blessed to be in the Saegertown Marching Band, so I was a majorette and enjoyed that throughout my high school years. So that was one of my favorite things. And one of my favorite things now is still the Crawford County home. I have worked at the home for 15 years. I did have an opportunity to work at the old home, so it has been my whole life. And I've dedicated my whole life to the facility, so that's one of my favorite things as well.
The borough has come a long ways. I'm sure they get a little upset with Wilson Hunter when they had the leaves and stuff to take care of in the fall, but you know, it is what it is. Plugs the drains and everything, but it's a sign of the times. And the fire department has gone by leaps and bounds, and it's made it a safe place to live. It's better than most cities have as far as that goes.
Well, the best part of Saegertown to me is growing up here. I said everybody was a big family. We had bologna sandwiches at everybody else's house, and all the parents watched. Everybody's parents knew who everybody was, and I said we all played together, and the parents were just as great as the kids were. Yeah, I just absolutely loved it. Yep, and the same with the high school. I said we got a great education, and I said, you know, there was, like I said, there wasn't too many kids that ever had any kind of squabbles or any problems with anybody in town. So I'd always recommend. Small town was good when I was growing up.
I have not lived here all my life. I'm a Maplewood graduate. I have spent all of my life in the Pencrest School District, and that's the part I'm most proud of. I love this community. I've been in the same classroom for 25 years with the same desk and the same chair, and I wouldn't want to go anywhere else. So, you know, getting to raise that next generation of students who will ask questions, who will tell stories. That's the best thing about Saegertown. I often say I have the best job in the world. The people are kind here. They truly want to reach out to others. I can't imagine spending my teaching career anywhere else. It's been the best job in the world.
I moved back after having lived in larger cities because of my roots here, of course, but also because of the small town feel. And anyone that has lived in a small town would say the same thing, that you can go over town and make 4 or 5 stops and get all your errands done, and on the way see half a dozen people that you know.
I think the favorite thing about Saegertown is anytime that I come into town, a lot of the people know me, or I have something on that says Bethesda, and there's always kind words, there's always smiles, and there's never that, oh, they're Bethesda, that's where the bad kids go. They asked us how things are going, and if something does happen that isn't the best for the agency, they're always supportive and always welcome us in their town.
My favorite thing about Saegertown has to be the Dairy Inn.
Saegertown was a good place to grow up. People were friendly. Everybody seemed to know each other pretty well. Nobody was really a stranger. And after all these years, I still find myself coming back to Saegertown, being involved in some of the community activities that are going on. And I really am glad that I grew up in the time that I did.
I like the small town atmosphere. I'm a small town guy. I was born and raised here. Have never left here, so very tied into the community, know a lot of people in the community.
There are so many aspects about Saegertown that I really, really like. One of the things is the community feel and the friendliness of the people that live here. You always feel welcome in Saegertown, no matter what business you go into, and everybody really tries to help each other, and I really love that about this small town. You can't get that in the big city.
It just is beautiful. As soon as you come around the bend, you see the creek, and the smile goes on your face, regardless if you're driving through or stopping at the store. And it's the people. It's no matter where you go. A smile is there, and it's a simple joy.
We have a nice variety of different experiences here in Saegertown, having Woodcock Dam and so many different athletic things that, of course, I'm into the history because that is my forte, but I think it offers a nice small town community feeling, and it has a lot of experiences for whatever people are interested in.
My favorite thing about Saegertown is community. You know everybody gets along, everybody helps each other. We live in a great town.
Well, I've lived in Saegertown most of my life, and I guess my favorite part of it is the people in the community spirit. If you see, we're active in a lot of projects, but we have like the Women's Club and the library and the Heritage Society and the fire department. A lot of people are involved, and things seem to get done. So it's exciting, and I obviously love the town. I've been here my whole life. So
this is a great community. Your community leaders here always have the best in mind. You know, you can't agree with everybody, and you're at the same time, but they've always pushed an agenda that benefits this town. You see good businesses here, and it's the whole thing. It's one of these communities that you mention somebody's name and somebody will know. Oh yeah, they live up here, or they live over there. And that's the nice thing about this. That's why I like having the American Legion involved so much with this community, because everything that you give out comes back.
I love Saegertown because this is home. No matter where I go, how far I travel, this is what feels like home to me. I have family, I have friends. It is a wonderful, loving community.
One of the things I love about Saegertown is coming from Charles Carroll. One of the things Charles Carroll once said is that America changed when it went from the front porch to the back deck. And one of the things about Saegertown, it's still a front porch town. So one of the things I love about Saegertown is people walk on the street, not the sidewalk. And why? Because the streets are so bare of cars. So one of the interesting things is, one of my favorite things to do is sit on the porch, the front porch, in the morning with a cup of coffee and just watching people going by. And eventually, before you know it, it may be 11 o'clock in the morning, you get to run to the store to buy hamburgers and hot dogs because little did you know, but you're now having a party and a lunch and a cookout. So that's the thing about Saegertown makes it special.
My favorite thing about Saegertown is the people. It's not just the Victorian community that you see here standing in front of us, but the incredible positive way that people conduct their lives. They are close, they form as a community to solve problems. They demonstrate and model some of the best ways to raise children I've ever seen, and I've been a teacher for 40 years. So I'm extremely proud of this community, as I am all of the small communities along French Creek, Venango, Cambridge, Waterford, all the way to Erie. I think we live in an amazingly wonderful place.
Our Town Stories from Saegertown is brought to you in part by Lord Corporation. Their passion for innovation is anchored by the company's unending drive to create more value for its customers. These collaborative relationships continue to take Lord on an innovative journey to create solutions that move every person in the world. Lord has developed products, services, and processes that move industries forward and position us all to reach for the impossible. Destined to shape a better tomorrow, Lord enables customer success by making the impossible real. Visit Innovating Together, Lord.com, for more information. Our Town Stories from Saegertown is also brought to you in part by Saegertown American Legion Memorial Post 205, Hitchie's Tavern, and viewers like you. Thank you.